I'm Sharon Bill. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'd like to spend a moment to just chat about the difference between practice and performance. And I think it's a very, very important thing to distinguish between the two when you're going to sit at your instrument and you need to decide what it is you're going to do. And I know that I say this all the time. However, I do think it's really, really important, and I think with the new ABRSM remotely assessed performance exam, there is another dimension now to consider as well. So whenever you're sitting at your instrument to do some practice, you need to bear in mind that this is practice, which means you don't always start at the beginning. In fact, you very rarely do start at the beginning of the piece that you're working on, and it should sound terrible. It's a very, very private thing. If anybody else is listening, then that's their own fault. You know, you just need to kind of create a little bubble, create some space, and ask people in your home to respect that space, and it's going to sound terrible. This is the part where you address problems, you chop little aspects out of the piece that you're working on, you work on the tricky bits, you dissect it, you analyse it, you note bash little sections, you know, kind of separate out little sections, and then you piece it back together. And oftentimes you'll start, say, at a latter section and you'll do a few bars, and then you'll retrace a few bars and build in and just kind of work backwards almost. And so that is what should sound terrible. And then eventually you build up the knowledge and skill and technical ability to then play a piece through. Then we start to think about performance, which isn't just playing through. So this now presumes that you've got your notes under your fingers, you've got the technical proficiency, you've built up the speed to an appropriate level, and then we have performance. And this is where the music then starts to blossom. I talk about this in my vlog, Blobs to Blossoms, and so I'm just capitalising on this really. I know I'm saying the same thing again, but I want to sort of unpack it a little bit further really. So when you are performing a piece, presuming that you've got all of the practice in place, this is now where the music starts to come off the page and we start to tell a story, paint a picture in music. And that will be things like your dynamic expression, quiet sections, loud sections, working on the articulation. Is this a little bit smooth? Is this a little bit staccato? In terms of, say for example, if you're playing the piano, should this be a weighty section using upper body arm weight, or should this be a very controlled section just using finger control? And the piece that you are playing will determine which sort of different movements of your body you will be using. You know, if you're playing a wind instrument, how will you be controlling your breathing? Your diaphragm will be exerting more pressure in certain places. You'll be working on the tonguing techniques, and then that's when you start to make the music your own. And this is where I think music is quite wonderful, because this is where everybody will play it a little bit differently. And so the composer gives us some directions, moderato, adagio, you know, the tempo, the mood, but every person's performance will be slightly different, and that's the great thing about it. And so be careful when you are sitting at your instrument that you are perfectly aware of what you aim to achieve. Should you be practicing, or are you working on a performance? And that takes me to the new ABRSM performance exam that's remotely assessed, where you play 4 pieces, one after the other, as a recording. And it's no mean feat, and I've talked about that as well in a previous vlog. But I think it does require a slightly different skill set in the way that you project your performance, and you're conveying a performance to no audience. And so that is really, really tricky, and you've got to be so sure of the pieces under your fingers before you've got the brain space to add this last dimension to your playing, to your performance. And this is where it's the difference between playing in a little bubble, just kind of bashing out the notes as if you're just kind of playing maths. Then, of course, you add the dynamics, but then to get that last performance edge, there's that extra dynamic where you are really projecting your performance, you're really playing it out there, and it's almost as if you are exaggerating your body language to really convey the mood. And I always think of it like as a play. If you were, think of a stage whisper, how exaggerated that is, or if somebody's stomping around the stage with a really demonstrative speech, it's really projected out there, and that's the way that you need to be projecting your musical performance. And I think it's really valuable to record yourself, because you may think that you have done quite enough to convey the dynamics, and then you listen back and you watch back your performance and you realise that actually the changes are very slight, and you can give so much more contrast to those dynamic and expressive changes. So you've really got to overemphasize them for them to project through to the performance. And if you think about it, if you were to go to a concert, back in the day when we could go to concerts, hopefully that day will come again, and if you were watching a performer, they may play a note perfect performance, but if they just look like they're sitting playing it to themselves, it's not very engaging, it's not very enjoyable experience, and you just feel like you've been left flat. Whereas if the performer thoroughly engages with their music, you can then take on, you can see what it is that they are conveying in their performance. And this is what it takes, quite a lot of practice to do that, and that is a skill in its own right. So just learning the notes and learning the pieces is only the first part. We then add all the dynamic expression, but performing it is an extra dimension. And I think it's very, very important that you need to be clear what it is that you're trying to do. So if you are working towards your performance exam recording, you need to decide when you sit at your instrument, am I going to sort out these little niggles and the pieces? That's practice, and I'm going to just chop them into sections and work on little bits. Or am I going to practice the performance? And then you need to be sure and clear in your own mind, I'm going to sit at my instrument, and I'm going to play through the whole piece or the whole 4 pieces, whichever it is you're working on, and I'm not going to stop. And that itself is a skill that requires practice. Otherwise you breed this stop-start attitude, and it's really then kind of cyclical, and it just descends and spirals down, because every time there's a tiny little glitch, you'll just stop. Whereas really, you need to practice playing through those little glitches. Ideally, yes, we would rather not make a mistake, but if you do, so what? That's okay. Just carry on and practice the art of performing. I do hope that's helpful to you. Thanks for listening. Bye.